And welcome to Terrain. As always, don't forget that active listening, like using our on-screen note taker, will help with focus and retention. Make sure your phone is on silent, other tabs are closed, and for maximum focus, we'd recommend using headphones. Throughout the course, there will be several opportunities to put what you're learning into practice, so if you'd like to really master the material, it's important that you follow along. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Expert Series. My name is Iman Zabi, and I'm the founder of Terrain. And this week we have Sarah Greesonbach with us. Sarah is the founder of the B2B Writing Institute, which is developing a workforce of highly trained and certified B2B writers to meet the B2B marketing content needs of the future. Say that 3 times fast. Since 2013, she's operated a B2B Content Studio, a freelance consultancy that helps agencies and Fortune 500 technologies, companies in HR, retail, e-com, and the higher ed space develop B2B content marketing assets like white papers, thought leadership articles, case studies, and more. And today she's going to be talking to us about infinite leads, the art of finding great new clients as a B2B writer. Sarah, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, of course. Well, and when you put it like that, I sound pretty good. So I'm excited.
This is going to be good. So to get things started, I know you have something prepared for us, so I'm just going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself, and then we'll do Q&A.
I love it. So I'll share my screen in a few minutes because I have kind of a how-to portion to show, like, really when I start from scratch looking for leads, the websites I go to and the process I work through to feel like there's too much work for me to handle. Like that's more of the kind of anxiety that I get as a writer, rather than this feast and famine sense of where do high-paying clients come from and do they even exist, which is a question I think we all need to ask in 2022. But I think this is really for the writer or the service provider who, whenever you're starting over and trying to develop leads for your business or get some of your invoicing ready for the month, you just kind of look at the whole internet and you just kind of shake it and kind of hope something comes out, and then nothing comes out except $20 blog posts. And then suddenly we're scrolling Glassdoor and looking for job descriptions. And that's not a really good way to spend your time. So the first thing I want to start with is just that there is work for you. I think that is a belief that we often don't get until we have experience with people coming to us or maybe through our network or something. But especially in B2B writing, where companies set aside $186,000 a year just for their content and their content marketing, understanding that this is a process that you plug into and that there are roles and jobs and content that needs to be written that there's already a budget set aside for. I think that's kind of the first spark that can lead you into understanding that there really is too much work out there. And it's more about figuring out the kind of work you want to do, the kind of topics you want to write on, and then the clients that are going to be the best fit for you. So freelance writing, it's not really something that you're foisting onto the world. Like, you aren't forcing yourself in and fitting it to you. It's something that people really want and that they need. And you just need to position yourself to be the person that they want to hire. And so the first step I'd give somebody when you're digging in is to start thinking more like a detective and less like a writer or a service provider. So you need to figure out who is out there that needs help explaining their product. And that means their product is nice. So it's new, it's innovative, it's complex, or it's expensive. And this is a trap new writers can fall into because we see people running blogs, maybe even coaches, small businesses and stuff like that. And they're offering like $10 a blog post, $100 a blog post. Even that seems to be on the lower end now. But it's because that blog isn't really making a lot of money. So you aren't going to go and work for a business that's not doing well and then realize that you aren't doing well either because you're not charging enough. But what if the person that you're writing for instead, they have a $70,000 software product, and every time they write a white paper, they sell one of those things. Suddenly, each white paper is kind of worth $70,000. And so they're more than willing to pay a fraction of that to get more leads into their funnel. And so a project rate of $3,000 to $5,000 to $7,000 for a white paper starts to look a lot more reasonable. And that's the kind of relationship that you're looking for. A project where you add value and you make people money, not where there's just a job listing that you can kind of fill in and be the writer monkey who helps them out. And I think another thing that limits people before we get to the how-to portion is your interests and how you feel about a topic being really important. It's not that if you find your passion, you'll never work again and just feel great all day. But when you're interested in something and when you're curious about something, when it gives you energy to think about a topic, that's actually your zone of genius. And that's where you need to spend time and learn more about it. But with new writers, and especially just anyone who's new to business, we restrict ourselves to what we already know. And we kind of forget that we can discover new interests and find things that we're interested in that maybe we didn't even know it existed like a month ago. And I think, especially in B2B, that pretty much covers every niche you could think of. It's like, we don't know that this stuff exists. And then when we find it, some of it's going to be fascinating and it's going to lead you down rabbit holes that can be really profitable for you. So for how to find leads, I did want to share my screen. I think this can work for anyone in B2B, anyone with a service to offer. If you work with companies that offer software or do anything with technology, which is basically every company nowadays, there are 3 places I'm going to send you. The first is actually Industry Dive. This is a client of mine, but it's a multi-million, multi-hundred million publication at this point, but it's focused on B2B and they create content and thought leadership as well as reporting. But I really see people more using it as a source of information. So you can see there's a lot of different niches that you might have a background in: banking, biopharma, cybersecurity, construction, food, HR. Like, these are all of the niches that you could start reading about. And really, it would start with choose 5 that kind of catch your eye, sign up for the newsletter subscription, and then start to see if you get yourself lost in any rabbit holes when the content comes your way. You might find that K through 12 technology and curriculum is really interesting to you. And then you find out, whoa, that's a startup space where 100 different companies are competing in marketing and they all need marketing content. So let me start to look at those and see which ones I want to work with and then go and pitch myself. MedTech, marketing, payments, smart cities. Perfect. So this is where I kind of start to see what could I be interested in. And so let's start with higher ed, just because that's interesting. I'm going to go to the publication and I'll start to read around. I'll just literally pick up on the news that's happening in this business space and maybe look at some higher ed tech trends. I don't know. This is interesting. And I realized, wow, I've read like 5 of these articles. This is pretty cool. Maybe this is something I could write about, read about, interview other people about. And then I take that over to a site called G2.com. G2.com is a technology review service. But what is really cool is that it works as a backwards registry for us to see all of the technology products that are out there. So I can come in here and say higher ed technology, and then suddenly, maybe just higher ed, I'm looking at 15, 25 different companies that I know they're active. I know that they have a product. I know they might need some writers. So let's look at Cadence, Mongoose Cadence. I don't know, but I look at them, I go to their website, and then you can go through that process of whatever industry that you're in. Do they have a great graphic design layout? Do they have their stuff together? Does it seem like they have a content strategy? Do they have a blog where they write about stuff? Right? So we can see they have podcasts, guides, case studies. And this means they have a marketing team that's looking for that kind of work. So either they hire it in-house, or because of the fluctuations of the season, they might use freelancers on the side every once in a while. So I'm going to take Mongoose Cadence and bring them over to the 3rd step. Remember, along the way, we've picked up like 10 to 15 new companies and ideas that we might be able to find. I'm going to look up Mongoose Cadence on LinkedIn. Perfect. And then I'm going to come over to pages people have also viewed and see all the similar pages. And then we're going to see for every company that we find through G2 or even through Industry Dive, we're going to find another 5 to 10 through LinkedIn to see similar sized companies doing similar marketing, which means they might have the same budget and they might have the same goals, which means you can come in and help them all with white papers. So now we have Target X, and even more beautiful, you can see everyone who works there. You can filter it and find their marketing department, and then you can connect with them and just say, I'm really interested in the higher education space. I saw your company, great blog post, would love to connect. Something very simple. And then same for Tech Buffalo, right? And this is a process we've gone through where we started with, here's just generic content that's being put out in this topic. And then I found a couple specific companies that might appeal to me, that might want to talk about topics that I'm capable of writing about or talking about. And then once we find a specific company, we've gone onto LinkedIn and we find even more companies like that. Cool. And that brings me towards the close of what I wanted to share, because this is a process that you can take and just do this every Monday for an hour. You go and find and network with 10 to 20 new people and slowly build your network over time, so that then you bring in the 3 parts of your pitching process, which is making sure that your LinkedIn and website are just decent and you don't look like a spammer, and you have a photo that looks approachable, and you talk about content marketing. Then you're going to start connecting with anyone and everyone who has shared interests. Don't necessarily pitch them right off the bat unless you find the marketing manager and that's a relationship you want to kick off. And then start to beef up on B2B marketing and how you help people. Start sharing links about that. Start sharing content that you've seen elsewhere, just to show people that you're in the space and you're active in the space. And truly, within a week or two, that's going to start having people pop up in your inbox and say, wow, we've been looking for a freelance writer, or I know a company that's looking for a freelance writer. Are you taking clients right now? And it can be that simple. So I think we had some lovely time for Q&A as well. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Yes. Okay. So I have lots of
questions. So I was
questions.
talking fast because that was really fun, but I can slow down now.
No, that was amazing. And I've written down all of those websites. I think it's really interesting because I'm not in this space at all. So it's very interesting to see how this is done. Very different from the personality-driven kind of online marketing sort of space. Very interesting to see. So for somebody who's looking to kind of get into the space, how would you recommend, well, what are some of the best industries to be in? And then how would you suggest choosing one?
Yeah, it would all start with interest to me, because in B2B, which stands for business to business, which is different from business to consumer because it's just companies selling to other companies, things can get dry and boring. So it shouldn't be that way. We're all working on it, but it can get that way. So if you don't have that kernel of interest, if you don't get fired up when you hear about a phrase like permissionless co-marketing, that's kind of a sign that it's not something that's going to be fruitful if you pursue it. There are certainly exceptions to that. If you want to pick an industry and just make money, I think finance is a great place to be. I think that's how people choose finance careers anyway. But really start with reading widely and then see what you can be interested in, because there's always a B2B angle of whatever you're talking about. Because if you take any B2C company and just look at the technology they use, there's going to be a B2B application for that, and they pay more for marketing.
No, I love that. And that makes a lot of sense. So if I was looking to get into something like this, I think one of the blocks that I would come up against is I don't have any professional qualifications in any of these. Like I don't have a background in finance. My background's in politics. I can't go out and write about med tech. Do you think that that's an actual barrier? Do you need to have like a foundation in it before, or is just an interest enough?
That's very much a mental barrier for people. Mm-hmm. But what's so interesting is I'll come across people with decades of experience and a PhD, like literally in a topic, and then they still don't feel qualified to write in this. Mm-hmm. So I would really push back on, are you a good writer and communicator? Are you a good researcher? And then you really could learn and write about anything. Because if you had to have a PhD to write about sustainable engineering in B2B, there wouldn't be any blogs. Like there would be no thought leadership. There would be no marketing. There would be no pay-per-click ads. It would all be over. So maybe it's less about thinking about the qualifications you don't have and focus more on, can I Google the crap out of everything that I come across? That's a superpower. That's going to take you anywhere you want to go in any niche. Yeah.
So you've mentioned white papers, but beyond, is that the primary way that people work with B2B companies, or are there other things that people can kind of add to their toolkit?
Oh, there's everything. Yeah. So white papers just happens to be my specialization. So it does come up a lot, but anything in marketing falls under umbrellas of content marketing or search engine marketing, or, the different kinds of marketing that we have. So it's more that I just focus on content marketing, which uses content, often thought leadership content with a little bit of SEO in there, in the form of blog articles, case studies, white papers, infographics, just really any kind of content. Because even spoken content like a webinar starts with a script, and all of this starts way back in content strategy, where you're writing down the themes and the things that are important to your company. So there's really again, it just starts with your interest, because if you're inspired by stories, then case studies in B2B, it's going to be a great place to be.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So part of this is kind of finding that $70,000 product and finding the right product, but the other part of it is actually pitching people and doing that cold outreach. Do you have any tips or strategies for how people can make that pitch more compelling?
I think so. Yeah. One thing that really was impressed upon me this past year is keeping things really simple and getting to the yes faster, because, and maybe that's a difference between more personality-driven businesses and B2B. In personality-driven businesses, I understand a longer pitch can be better to show that you've really put thought and time and effort and you really care about the person that you're emailing. But in B2B, it's almost like you're plugging into the function more than you are yourself. So it's less about, hi, I'm Sarah, here's all the things I've done. And it's more about, I saw your company, I see you do content, do you ever work with freelancers? And that can really be it, because either they do or they don't, and that's the yes. And then after that yes, you can get to, well, I've helped other companies like you. Here are my clips. Do you need content now? Should we meet?
Right.
That kind of stuff. Like those smaller yeses, I think that's the opposite of spamming, and that's why that's become more important lately, because people are just so sensitive to a pitch in the inbox, especially in marketing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And you recommend doing that over LinkedIn versus email?
I have had success with both. I think as my footprint has grown, people come to me more on LinkedIn. But when I first began, yeah, maybe it was like a 50-50 thing, because I would more connect with people on LinkedIn just to grow that network and be on people's radar, and then actually send pitches through my email.
That makes sense. So, okay, so I'm brand new to the space and I want to get started. What do I need to have in place? So a website, a decent LinkedIn profile. If I don't have any prior B2B experience, do I just write something up and use those as my samples?
Yeah, so I would start with b2bwritinginstitute.com. So we have a free download that'll walk you through like where to go on Industry Dive, read the different things, then start to work on spec pieces. So writing your own examples. I think there's other great resources like contentmarketinginstitute.com and Superpath by Jimmy Daly. Just exposing yourself to these ideas in B2B marketing is the most important thing, because it's almost like this is the secret behind the scenes information that people have had, that once you see it and once you realize it and once you see the amount of money people are sending back and forth, a $25 blog post starts to seem criminal. I think that's why we see so much difference of opinion when anybody posts about pricing. Some people will be like, wow, I just made 10 cents a word. This is crazy. And then somebody else is saying, that's horrible. I can't believe that company's trying to get away with that. You should start at $2 a word. And it's this sense of perception, because people are looking at different companies and they're looking at different projects and projects that deliver different values. And that's where the secret is. Like you have to expose yourself to what's going on behind the scenes.
Perfect. Okay. So say I want to write a spec piece. Where can I go to learn more about B2B writing, how to write a spec piece, what a white paper is? Where do I start?
Well, that's where it gets promotional. So I have a free course on the foundations. And then the Kickstarter is a co-writing group where we actually write your first clips together. And that'll start, it runs like 3 times a year. So that I kind of made it because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So that's as good as my advice can be there. But I do think it's very possible. Subscribe to those newsletters, read a bunch, and then try to write a listicle or a summary of like 5 blog posts that you've read in the same area. And I think just that practice of reading, absorbing, and then summarizing, I think that would be just a great starter piece for somebody in an industry.
Perfect. And we were going to need the link to that course so we can plug it in
Cool.
in the show notes. But this was incredible. Sarah, any parting words for anybody who's trying to get into this space before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think this is an idea I'm still playing with, so it might not be a perfect delivery, but I think high paying clients are a myth, and there's only highly paid writers because there's no client who's going to want to pay more. It's just that the work you're doing is worth more.
Right.
So we kind of have to take on that responsibility of finding things that are worth a higher rate and then getting really good at writing those things. And it's possible. That's why we're seeing so many 6-figure and 200K writers floating around out there. But I think systematizing that and then creating a network around that is going to be the hard work for the next few years.
I love that. I think that's so smart. I think it's a very interesting interpretation of the whole charge what you're worth talk, because it's not charge what you're worth, it's charge what your work is worth.
Right.
And I love that. And honestly, I have nothing to add. We should just wrap up here because I think that was perfect. But Sarah, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way of doing that? I know you have a community as well.
Yeah, Twitter has been very active lately. So, oh yeah, Sarah. And yeah, if you just Google B2B Writing Institute.
Perfect.
That'll flood your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's it. Don't forget to leave a review and tell us what this course could add to your bottom line. This helps other entrepreneurs, freelancers, and business owners decide whether this course is worth their time and gives the team at Terrain valuable feedback to help make this platform even better.